Hello, I'm Michael and I'm at Greenacres farm, Cincinnati. In today's video we'll be discussing grazing our winter stockpiled forage. In this video, as we can see here, we're utilising stockpiled forage and baled grazing to supply feed to our cows and sheep right throughout winter. We'll be talking about the benefits of stockpiled fescue grass and how we can set the farm up for maximum spring production. In this area here we can see a typical example of our stockpiled fescue grass. When we look at the grass here, we have some new green shoots that are starting to grow, but we also have some frost-dried grasses which are showing this yellow or brown colour. What's important to note with this yellow type of grass is that even though it's frost-dried and looks damaged, the nutritional quality is still very high. In this type of grass, the total digestible nutrients can still be over 55%, and the crude protein can still be good quality of 12, 13, maybe even 14% crude protein. This is more than enough nutrients to supply the energy and crude protein demands for our dry cows over the winter time. Apart from the benefits to the nutritional quality of using stockpiled forages for our cows and sheep, another important factor is that we want to remove the winter stockpiled grass to set the farm up for spring grazing. With this plant matter here that's sitting on top of the crown of the plant, there's very little light reaching the base part of the plant which has the growing point. All this yellow and brown material here will slowly deteriorate and rot as we get into warmer and wetter weather in spring. So during our stockpile grazing we want to remove all of this material with our cows grazing, and this will allow maximum sunlight down into the base of the plant. Another important factor that we consider when we're looking at our stockpiled forage is the amount of dry matter and feed available to our cows. As the forage sits here naturally, the height off the ground is very low. It might only be, say, 3-4 inches high off the ground, but when we actually look into the amount of dry matter that's here, there's a huge amount of feed available. With these yellow leaves which have been frost-dried, as we mentioned before, the feed quality is still very good and the dry matter has increased substantially over the past couple of weeks of freeze drying. So in this particular area here, with a forage height of this size and of this quality, we could easily estimate there's 1 ton to 1.5 tons of available dry matter feed per acre. So when we factor this into the calculations of the amount of forage and feed we give to our cows, this saves us a huge amount of costs in terms of purchasing in less grain or less feed in hay or silage that has to be purchased in to feed our animals. We have a huge amount of valuable feed ready to go on the farm. Here in the fescue belt, Kentucky 31 fescue is the most common and abundant type of grass that is found on farms locally. One of the problems with this type of grass is that during summertime it can produce a compound called ergovaline, which creates several different problems for our animals. Some of the health problems caused by the ergovaline toxin during summertime in Kentucky fescue is that it reduces growth rates and can also lower fertility in breeding cows. During the winter time, however, starting from September-October time, this compound naturally drops in levels throughout the plant. So for winter stockpile grazing and spring grazing in particular, the Kentucky 31 is very well suited to grazing animals such as beef and cows, as its compound level has reduced by up to 85%. Another benefit of grazing low and setting a low residual during springtime is that we set the growing point of the ryegrass and the fescue plant at about 2 to 3 inches in height. The benefits of this is that from here in spring we're going to get a huge amount of leaf production with very short and low amount of stem being grown. The plant will naturally try to elongate the stem and produce more stem as the season progresses, but in springtime it's very important that we try and set this as low as possible. The leaf area of the plant is going to contain the most amount of energy and protein, which will provide growth to our animals, whereas the stem part contains more fibre and lignin and is of lower nutritional quality. Our goal for the first couple of rotations in spring is to keep our residual low and close to the ground and to try and maximise as much leaf production as possible from the farm. If we look at the number of leaves, we can see there's 1, 2, 3, 3, 4, 5 leaves in total coming from this single plant. However, the grass plant at any stage can only have 3 actively growing leaves, which we can see with these greener coloured ones, 1, 2 and 3. The other 2 leaves have already started to senesce and deteriorate, and that's why they have this more yellow or brown colour. Although these leaves here have started to senesce and be frost dried and turn yellow and brown colour, the nutritional value of these leaves is still very good quality. In our stockpile grazing and our first rotation in spring, what we want to do is remove as much of this old leaf material as possible to allow light to come down to our growing point at the base of the plant here. So after our spring grazing, we will be removing several of these leaves. And our grass plant will start to look to have a residual height similar to shown here. From here we can see that light is fully able to get down to the base of the plant, and that's going to allow the plant to grow very rapidly in springtime and start to produce a lot of leaf material from here. We can also see that the amount of lignin and stem content of the entire plant is quite low, and that our growing point is starting off here just a couple of inches off the ground. In our first couple of rotations, we'll try and keep the growing point here and not allow the stem to elongate too far up the plant, and this will help us maintain maximum leaf production and maximum energy production for our cattle and sheep off the land base.